Welcome to this SBDS video update.
It's designed to inform you about the changes and enhancements to SBDS coverage with the new version 12.0 software.
We've got some new features that will help you make faster and better diagnostic decisions and repairs.
So let's get started. New 12.0 features include a new vehicle entry procedure, information module improvements, some changes in the miscellaneous module, and toolbox changes incorporating a fuel delivery test for bank-fired engines, power balance, spark duration, and ignition test in the road test category for EDIS engines, an ignition system test for DIS systems, a charging system test, plus expanded and improved coverage for electronic controlled transmissions. Your 12.0 update package has the new compact disc with installation instructions, two new pieces of hardware, the adapters C985 and C1075, a 12.0 highlights book, a supplement for your user's guide, copies of the SBDS newsletter, and 12.0 coverage charts. When installing updates after 12.0, we will no longer use an installation disc. Watch for new installation instructions that will arrive with future updates. Now let's look at what's new and different with 12.0. Notice that the vehicle entry procedure has a new feature. We can now enter the vehicle odometer reading along with the VIN number. The odometer reading will then appear in the banner area. Notice that the time and date information are also shown in the banner area. Next, we'll go to the information module. The broadcast messages still cover 3 months. Now there's complete 92 coverage for all TSBs. Calibration coverage includes 88 through 92 cars and light trucks. Watch for navigation changes in this module. The user guide has been revised to reflect 12.0 functions. The service manuals include the complete 93 powertrain control and emission diagnosis or H manual. The EVTM button replaces the wiring diagrams button. Electrical vacuum troubleshooting manuals have complete vehicle coverage through 92. And 93 EVTMs will be phased in with the 12.0 updates. Recall and owner notifications are covered from 88 through December of 92. Now let's look at an important item in service manuals. The 93H manual incorporates the SAE standard J1930 or universal acronyms now required for all manufacturers. 12.0 contains a glossary of J1930 acronyms or technical terms and their definitions. Let's select P for PCM. We find that PCM stands for Powertrain Control Module. It's what we used to call a processor or EEC module. This section can be helpful whenever we have a question about a new acronym. In the miscellaneous module, we find there are only 2 buttons. The screen alignment button is gone. When we load new software, screen alignment now occurs automatically. If it's necessary to align the screen at another time, we can use the utilities portion of an installation disk. To do this, power the SBDS down. Insert the installation disk in the A drive and turn the rocker switch on. The PVA will stay off for this procedure. Remember, we don't turn the PVA on until we see a welcome screen, and we won't see one during this procedure. When we get the Utilities menu, simply press the F6 key on the keyboard and follow the instructions. That's all there is to it. Remember, if you have any problems with your SBDS, call the support center at 1-800-654-4777. Diagnostics has no changes other than the expanded coverage, which now includes 93 models. OASIS procedures are the same as before, so let's go to the toolbox and see what's new. For engines with bank-fired injectors, we have a new fuel delivery test which compares the relative injector flow between banks. Here's the hookup screen, and this screen shows a normal relationship between the injector banks. Let's disconnect an injector and repeat the test to see the difference. Here we see an obvious difference between the two banks. At this point, we might want to touch pinpoint, and SBDS recommends that we do a relative injector flow test, which uses the G69 adapter to isolate the problem injector. Now let's move on to another area where we've upgraded the diagnostic capabilities of SBDS.
To illustrate these improvements, we'll look at two new ignition tools. If we scroll through the road test instruments for this Explorer, we find an ignition recorder monitor is now included. The hookup screen shows that we use the C985 cable adapter for this procedure. The C985 is one of the two new adapters that is included with a 12-volt release. Be sure you connect A to A and B to B, since reversing these connections would prevent you from running the test. Now, let's touch Help to learn what this new tool will actually do. Overview gives us basic information about the test. Ignition Road Test lets you view and record ignition system data from EI High Data Rate. That's a new acronym for EDIS-equipped vehicles. We will find that with this tool, we can play back recorded data in the power balance, spark duration, or engine running ignition system test formats. We can make 6 15-second recordings, which capture 12 seconds before and 3 seconds after the pendant record button is pushed. The help screen will also tell us the pendant usage available during the test. Here are the pendant displays: actual and desired SAW in degrees, EI high data rate ignition system mode, either repetitive or non-repetitive, vehicle power in DC volts, ignition ground in DC volts, PIP in RPM, crank position in peak voltage. After upload, we name our recording using the touch screen. We find our playback screen allows 3 options. We can view spark duration, power balance, and system test. Let's look at power balance. As we move the slide button, we find that we lost number 2 cylinder approximately 6 seconds before capture. Notice we can toggle from this test directly to spark duration or system test. The reset button clears the histogram. We'll select spark duration now. Based on what we just saw, we move our slide button to 6 seconds before capture and see that the miss was caused by an ignition concern in number 2 cylinder. A look at the system confirms the ignition concern at the same point in time. This test could also tell us about general ignition system problems involving vehicle power, VRS input, timing, ignition ground, and so on. Also notice we can toggle from this test back to spark duration or power balance.
We've switched vehicles now so we can look at the new ignition system tests for DIS vehicles. In the toolbox menu, look for ignition system test. Here's the first instruction screen. Notice the new SAE J1930 description for this system. It's called EI low data rate. Proceed with the hookup, following the instructions. Here's the harness display. It's similar to the TFI-4 or EDIS test. Problem circuits will be outlined in red. The pinpoint button will provide suggestions for isolating the concern. Here's the beginning of the running crank test. Let's touch help for more details about these tests. This screen explains that there are 3 parts to the low data rate ignition test: the harness test, engine crank test, and engine running test. The engine running display shows a problem in the reset or crank system. Pinpoint will define possible problem areas. We have repaired the fault, so let's return to the engine running display. Here we have a new symbol or icon to remind us there is a pendant function with this screen. We can activate capture either from the screen or by touching the asterisk button on the pendant. Look at the pendant display or refer to help for actual pendant features.
There's even more diagnostic help in the 12-volt release. The toolbox now has a starting and charging category. Let's scroll to the starting and charging category and look at the charging system test. It includes an information screen that lists the more obvious things you always check first. The hookup screen says to connect the GP cable to the D243 current probe, but it doesn't tell what to do with the D243, so let's go to Help and select Hookup. We see that at this time the D243 is not connected. This screen will help us test the I circuit. In this case, the alternator warning light is on, so I'll touch Yes. Now we see where the D243 is going to be used. So we place it as instructed. This will calibrate the ammeter. Here we find more instructions for connecting the D243. After clamping the transducer as directed, we continue. Now we're testing the alternator lamp warning system and looking for basic alternator voltage. Let's answer no. The system must stabilize for 30 seconds. Now we turn accessories on to load the alternator and follow the instructions to proceed with the test. The pendant display shows RPM, amps, volts, and time. The results of this test will be automatically recorded on the vehicle log after the test is completed. The next screen shows the results. In this case, our charging rate was below specification. Let's see if pinpoint will help us. Let's answer yes to this. We see instructions for continuing the test procedure. Let's use a jumper to ground the field post of the regulator and touch continue. If the alternator would have started working, this screen would have told us to replace the regulator. But since it didn't respond, the problem has to be in the alternator. Let's say we've repaired the alternator. Now, when we touch continue, we go to a retest. This time, the test results look better. Note the pendant icon in the banner area. As you recall, this indicates pendant function. We've got one more step in the charging system test. After we follow the instructions on this hookup screen, SBDS for key off battery load. SBDS looks for less than 100 milliamps without air suspension and less than 200 milliamps with air suspension. We'll answer no. And here are our final test results for the battery load test, battery state of charge, and charging system performance.
The test routine for transmissions with electronic controls is basically the same as it was in 11.0. However, 12.0 coverage has been expanded to provide pressure test and transmission DCL display for 4 EAT transmissions in 93 vehicles with EEC4 powertrain control systems. Coverage is also provided for the 93 AX4S and 4R70W transmissions. The pressure test procedure is unchanged, but we have an additional item in DCL display, so let's look at that. The first thing we see on the hookup screen is a reminder to perform a self-test. Let's back up to the toolbox menu and scroll to the electronic engine control, key on, engine off, self-test. Follow the instructions and then touch continue. We get a code 652 which indicates a problem in the TCC system. Let's go to help for a moment and select glossary. Here's a new glossary menu. Let's index T, scroll to the acronym TCC, and touch definition. We find a description and comparison to terms previously used for this system. Now, let's touch pinpoint and follow the instructions for hookup. Notice this reference to the C1075 adapter. The C1075 is one of the new adapters included in the 12.0 package. After hookup, we'll touch continue to complete the diagnostic test. We see that the problem is an open located in the TCC control circuit. Okay, now that we've completed the diagnostic or self-test, let's go back to the toolbox menu, scroll to the transmission DCL display, and proceed with the hookup. Even though it's not listed here, remember that it's always a good idea to connect the SBDS battery leads. Notice that the icon shows we have pendant function, but the new item on the display is MLPV. Let's touch pinpoint and scroll to MLPV to learn more about it. Here's a description with a table showing the appropriate voltage for each transmission selector position. As we move the slide button, we can access additional information about MLPV. As the transmission selector is moved, we can see the MLPV voltage change. Other display items are unchanged. Notice that the navigation button is superimposed over the active vehicle data, another new 12.0 feature. The 12.0 package will arrive at your location soon. When installed, it will continue to expand the capabilities of your SBDS.
With so many new features, it may seem difficult to keep up, but remember the help button.
And don't hesitate to call the support center at 1-800-654-4777 for any SBDS-related questions or concerns.
As always, your input has been invaluable to SBDS development. We look forward to your continued comments, suggestions, and success stories.
Together, we're helping to make more and more Ford owners the kind of satisfied, loyal customers who will buy our vehicles and use our service again.